for coming in the rain. How's everyone? Great. Very well. Okay. So, hi. I'm Jason Liu. I just got off a plane from LA at like 3 in the morning. And let's see. So, I run a blog called Ultraculture at ultraculture.org, which is about, is this on, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. And I published several books on the occult. The first one was Generation Hex, which is an anthology of writing on occult stuff that came out in Disinformation in 2005, which was a practical grimoire and a call to youth revolution and occult renaissance, which all of a sudden is happening, which I'm really excited about, especially here. It seems to be ground zero. I also edited the Psychic Bible with Genesis by Horus. You've seen that?
Yeah.
It's containing all the magical and occult writings of the Temple of Psychic Youth in the 80s, which was the group that popularized. I'm sure you guys all know about it, but it was the group that popularized Magick, body piercing, acid house, and really laid the foundation for the occult revival we're experiencing right now. So, my talk tonight is about magic. It's basic. And I'm assuming everyone here is okay with that. We're like in like a safe space here. Everyone is like on the level about that. I don't have to preface that at all. So, okay. So to get onto that topic, I wasted my 20s, right? Running all over the world, learning the secrets of the occult from various cultures. Let's see, I ran around, I learned chaos magic, ceremonial magic, spent a lot of time learning with Genesis Purage, became a Sufi, became a Freemason, went to India, became initiated as a Nepali indigenous shaman, and later got a day job. So that's where I'm coming from. And I was asked to speak tonight, so I'd like to share some of that fucked up worldview with you. So let's get into it. Let's talk about magic, and let's try to leave as much of the nonsense as we can out of the equation, because there's a lot of it in the subject, and the topic is so vast, it covers so much ground, and goes back to the beginnings of human history, that there's a lot to filter through. So I just want to give you the basics, which for a lot of you may be on level with that already, but please store up questions for the end. I'm really good with questions. If you have technical questions with magic, I'm happy to answer those as well. So, what is magic? Magic is the first belief system of humanity. The first, before science, religion, anything, and it will be the last. Magic is mankind's natural way in the world. Underneath the social conditioning, the layers of religion, and economic and sexual repression, and bullshit ideology, and all of that, the character armory is what Wright would have called it. We are innately whole, magical beings at our core, right? It's not something you need to build up. It's not something you need to make yourself into. It's something that you uncover within yourself that's there waiting within you. So to rest within that presence within you, to rest with a still mind, with a clear mind, free from conditioning, you can do that. That's how you become one with magic. And to be at one with magic is to be at one with the universe, simultaneously connected with your inherent divinity and with the cosmos. But this is not a very popular option in modern society. We are much more interested in distracting ourselves from that. Distracting ourselves from ourselves. We distract ourselves with mindless entertainment, interpersonal drama, meaningless jobs, addictions, video games, whatever it happens to be, right? But as the situation is said, underneath the pavement is the beach. And underneath all that noise that we're constantly bombarded with as a culture, that we're constantly being confused by, whether it's coming out of the internet or, billboards or whatever, underneath all of that, all the messages that are constantly thrown at us, telling us who we need to be and what we should be, underneath that is where magic is. Magic is the innate ability of every human being to connect to the universe. And that's really it. There's been a lot of scaffolding of belief systems and all Kabbalistic stuff, All these cultures have their own symbol sets and languages to make it seem, like a secret thing to create priesthood classes and priesthood caste, but you don't really need that. It's our innate ability to connect to the cosmos. And nobody can sell that to you, and nobody can take it from you because it's your birthright and it's yours to develop if you choose. So, to be a magical being is to, at least for short periods of time, learn to drop the boundary between yourself and the greater universe. To realize that you were never separate from the universe, and that in fact the cosmos is your larger body. But there's a lot of paths to that understanding. Yeah, you can try and learn it from external sources. You can read books, you can join cults, you can go to teachers and gurus that try and glean the secrets. You can look it up online, you can follow these step-by-step instructions and all these recipe books that people have been writing for centuries. And that is a good way to start. Eventually it comes from within you, but you can pick it up from external sources, and eventually if you follow the experiments that are laid down in those books, you will get results. Most people who do that start for selfish reasons. Maybe people get into magic because they feel powerless or alone or afraid, or they feel like they're just not getting their just due from the universe. It's not enough for whatever reason. So maybe people do a little bit of sorcery here and there to get some money, to get a job, to get that person back that ran away. And maybe it works, at least for a little bit. But pretty soon, if you start on this path, you realize that's not the ultimate. Pretty soon you realize that it's not about what you can get. When you throw yourself fully into the magical current, it will do exactly one thing, and that is destroy you utterly. Rather than making your wildest dreams come true, magic will show you that you're sleeping. It will shock you awake. And in the end, there will be nothing left of the person that you thought you were at all. But a little pile of dust. Yeah. Instead of bringing you trinkets and shiny things from the universe, magic will completely dissolve the boundary between you and that universe and show you that the entire universe isn't just a playground, it's you. And that's when the real fun begins. So it's not about being a magician, whatever that means. It's not about being special and different and weird and having all the cool jewelry and the tattoos and all of that. Although that's fun for a while. It's about completely throwing yourself into the magic of reality as it is. Throwing your whole being into the world and seeing what happens. We are magical beings alive in a magical universe. And more, at least for me, I find that the language of magic is the only way to explain reality, because it's the only thing that factors into things like human willpower, like synchronicity, like coincidence, like meaning, like what does it all mean? Instead of just the dry language of science, which is extremely important in its own right, but doesn't offer the answers that people are seeking. Science is the greatest tool humanity has for discovering truth in the material world. But in the realm of spirit, in the realm of meaning and truth and beauty, humanity has been given religion, and religion is just lies, right? But just because priests turn out to be child molesters, does that suddenly mean that there's no such thing as divinity and spirit? No, of course not. Just because humanity has had an abusive relationship with spirituality, for lack of a better word, religion as petty dictators, does that mean there's no such thing as a higher reality? No, of course not. So what we need is a tool as precise as science, a system of experimentation that will allow us to understand the world of spirit just as precisely and without deception as we now understand physics, for instance. And understand it on our own terms, and prove it for ourselves experimentally, not take it on faith from somebody else. Understand it because we did the experiments and we got the results and we have seen what we've seen. It's about doing it for ourselves instead of relying on somebody else to do it for us. That's really what it comes down to with magic. Religion is about taking inherited truth from somebody else. Same with science. Magic is about doing it yourself, bringing your own divinity out. So that tool that I'm calling for is magic. So beneath all the bullshit, the new age pap, the cheap satanic shit, the counterculture carny shit, right, is, to my mind at least, the secret spiritual tradition of the West. And I really mean that, a tradition, something that's been passed down for centuries, very quietly, very secretly, because of church repression. But it's a path that's valid and complex, or even more so, perhaps, than Tibetan Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta, for instance, are in the East. So, here's my contention. We're standing here, we're alive. This is, to my mind, the greatest moment in history. And we are as gods, and we're learning how to act like it, finally. Our gadgetry and our technological wizardry makes us more than human. We can instantly communicate with anybody in the world, as if telepathically. We can instantly have anything brought to our door, as if by magic, from anywhere in the world. So why is the iconography of magic suddenly so popular? That's a direct question to all of you, because you guys are running with this. Why is there occult imagery in every band and suddenly on every street corner? I mean, at least in LA where I live, it's everywhere. It's why is that? Is it really just an Illuminati MK Ultra mind control experiment to fuck with hipsters? It's possible. I don't know anything about that, if that's true. Or is there something even stranger going on? It's my belief that what we're on the verge on is the biggest magical renaissance in history. And I think the people in this room represent early adopters of that. Why is everybody suddenly interested in the occult and psychic abilities and spirituality and weird shit? I believe what we're looking at is a completely new type of human being, and that you occult kids are the precursors of a way of thinking that's going to become much more prevalent in the coming decades. So, how did we get here? In order to understand magic in the 21st century, and where we're going, we need to understand where we've been. We need to understand the superstitious beliefs that humanity has been through in the past so that we can separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were, because there's a lot of inherited superstition and dogma and lazy thinking and obfuscation and codification in the occult that isn't particularly helpful. In order to answer that question, though, we need to go back to prehistory, to humanity's first steps in the world. We need to understand what magic was and why we lost it. When mankind was born out of Africa, magic was our first way. Like a 7-year-old child who lives in a world of omens and superstitions, so were we. Mankind dwelled in a world of totem and taboo, in which we were not separate from nature. It was during this time, before agriculture, that humanity dwelled totally in the magical world, in the magical mindset. The Bible refers to this period of history as the Garden of Eden. And mankind's immersion in nature was glyphed as the pre-fall state of Adam and Eve. In the psycho-historical model of the Golden Dawn, the Victorian magical society that gave us the modern occult revival, and of Aleister Crowley, its most controversial student, this period of human development is called the Aeon of Isis. Isis is the archetypal feminine, right? The great mother goddess. Because it was at this time that, not yet having understood how sex works, we believed that women spontaneously became pregnant and gave birth. Bear with me here. Therefore, because we had this undeveloped understanding, we saw women as uniquely divine and worshiped the goddess as the source of all life and magic, as women were believed to uniquely have power over life and death. Humanity was, at this point, matriarchal, as we see from the Paleolithic sculptures that have been unearthed across the world from this time that depict women with massive breasts and hips, the archetypal goddess figure. We worship the spirits of nature and fertility because those are the forces that define our world. The late psychedelic scholar Terence McKenna, in the book Food of the Gods, suggests that at this time mankind was engaged in the consistent use of psilocybin mushrooms, easily harvested in the wild. Sexuality for Paleolithic man was a never-ending psychedelic orgy. Sex was tribal and communal and regularly conducted in the psychedelic space. In this period of history, we were fully immersed in the spirit world, with no distinction whatsoever between this world and the next, between waking reality and the dream time, as the Aborigines call it. Lines had not yet been drawn between men and women. Mankind was in the Garden of Eden. This was a period of history that goddess-based spirituality, the ecological movement, and many other forms of New Age and shamanic beliefs suggest we return to. But I hate to bring it to you, it's not coming back. And it wasn't necessarily that great in the first place. However, it's from this prehistorical period that we inherit the most basic forms of magic. Shamanism, both psychedelic and otherwise, dominated this period as mankind attempted to make sense of its world through intermediaries, shamans, that could explain existence. It's these beliefs that would later survive as underground traditions like Tantra and witchcraft, in which psychedelic sexuality and magic were still practiced, albeit in secret for reasons we'll explore in a bit. So this is where we were, high as a kite and having group sex constantly. But this entire setup changed, as Terence McKenna suggests, with a series of droughts that made food and psychedelic mushrooms much less plentiful. This was the fall from Eden. And falling from that primordial state, we were forced to look for ways to preserve and store our goods. So it was at this time that mankind made some very important discoveries. The first was that seeds could be transported, planted, and farmed. And that if the world was in a state of drought, then people could start planting crops and they could save them for drought conditions. Therefore, this is how agriculture was born. And with it, the concept of ownership, right? Instead of randomly picking sustenance from the wilderness, crops could now be grown and therefore owned and even hoarded. Men were no longer equal. Some had access to farm crops and some didn't. So you can see in an instant, patriarchy was born. Because along with the realization that planting seeds can grow crops came a parallel realization that the process worked the same way with humans. Babies were now seen clearly as the product of male seed planted in women. And if men could own planted crops, then the same mindset was now extended to women. The balance of power now shifted from the feminine to the masculine. Agriculture, ownership, and patriarchy were born in a second. And as far as the psychedelic mushrooms went, those had to be preserved and saved as well, because they would be quickly disappearing from the wild. The most readily available medium of storage at the time, as some of you may know, I don't know, would have been honey. If you put psilocybin mushrooms in honey, right, not only do the mushrooms last forever, but the honey ferments as well, and then the honey becomes psychedelic alcohol, which is a fun science experiment to try on the weekend if it gets rainy like this again. So now you got psychedelic alcohol. And with the accidental discovery of alcohol, accidental as a way to store psychedelics, mankind was now in for a very, very tough time. So we've got planting crops, owning human beings, and alcohol. You see where this is going. So it was at this time that a wholly new epoch in the evolution of human consciousness was born, in which the image of the mother goddess that we had previously worshipped was now replaced by the father god. Since men were now thought to have the sole power to create life and to plant crops, we now began to worship the male secrets of agriculture and growth. And bear in mind, even up until the 1920s, it was still widely thought, at least among maybe not among scientists, but among common people, it was still widely thought that men planted babies in women. So the 20s. Yeah. So it was because of the cycle of agriculture that we began to worship male gods that died and resurrected, just like the crops, just like the male erectile cycle, just like the sun going up and down every night. Aleister Crowley called this period of history the Aeon of Osiris, where Osiris is the archetypal Egyptian hero king that dies and is reborn, just like the crops, just like the wheat. And in the same way, we began to worship the sun, because as the Egyptian Book of the Dead tells us, the sun dies and is resurrected every night, and ancient people thought that the sun actually died at night and was resurrected as a completely new sun the next day. That was the widespread belief. So all these ideas, you can see how all these ideas and symbols were linked together in this obsession all of a sudden with death and resurrection. And of course, the Egyptian Book of the Dead connects all of those, and then also connects it to the metaphor of the death and resurrection of the soul as a process of gaining immortal life for them. So, setting all that aside, this is where Christ comes from, right? And all of the dying gods that were worshipped throughout the world as symbols of the death and resurrection of crops. Christ dies, he's crucified, he's reborn, just like the crops, the sun, the male, etc. So now in the new social order, just as kings drew their economic sustenance from agriculture, so now they derive their divine right to rule from the father and solar gods who embody the masculine mysteries. As Paleolithic fertility goddesses spread across the world in the previous era, it was during this time that we started to see phallic symbols and buildings constructed across the globe. Obelisks, tower monuments, and today's skyscrapers became the phallic symbols that suggested the divine power of male kings. Across cultures, it's not just Western culture. Eastern culture is the same. Ashoka was the great Buddhist conqueror of India who built obelisks all throughout India when he came through. It's cross-culture. Why is that? Why did we suddenly become obsessed with these symbols? So consider this. Consider the solar myth of Christ. Consider the death and resurrection. And if he's the archetypal male savior, and if he's the most famous, he's still not the only one. It was just the pattern for how gods were seen in that period of history. Also consider how the spiritual systems and religions of the world that were prevalent in the last 2,000 or 3,000 years all relied on agricultural metaphor. The Kabbalistic tree of life, right? The Bodhi tree that the Buddha attained enlightenment under. So on and so forth throughout the religious annals of our recent past. These are all agricultural symbols. Also consider the spread of slavery as the obsession with property extended to human beings. Consider the sexual subjugation of women and children. And most of all, consider the terrifying spread of monotheism with its single, all-seeing, persecuting God and its threats of eternal torment and damnation for sexual transgression. What is this with ruling elites imposing their will upon a populace they were farming, just as surely as they were farming crops, and controlling the sexuality of their populace because they knew it was the best way to keep them under wraps? With me so far? Okay. So, that time is over. The era of patriarchy is over, and it will not be replaced with the matriarchal age. We're not going back to nature. We're not going back to the old ways. We're not going back to the womb, as Freud might have said. Instead, as others might have suggested, we're now in the age of the child, the synthesis of male and female, the time in which we are not obsessed with nature, the time in which we are not obsessed with controlling human beings, but the time in which we attain our divine birthright by going to the stars. So here's where we really get into the meat of the talk. All that is set up, right? This is where we leave behind all of that old stuff. All that old magic crap, right? Forget it. Forget it. Leave it behind with all the superstitious crap of matriarchal prehistory and all of the hopeless enslavement of the patriarchal dark ages. Everything we usually think of as magic, right? Spells, curses, hexes, Wicca, Fruits of Alchemy craft, archaic shamanism, religious ritual, the church, monastic orders, all of that shit. That's old Aeon. It's old Aeon magic. And it's all Ren Fair at this point. Right? To my mind, at least. It's beautiful in its own way. It's incredible. But it's just not applicable to the real world now. It's not going to get you from point A to point B. And people who still engage in the old systems of magic are essentially historical reenactors at this point. It's embarrassing for a reason, right? So let's get into the real shit then. And the real shit is this question: what is the new Aeon? According to Aleister Crowley, who, despite the extent to which people like to bag on him to prop up their own egos, and their own moral superiority, or show that they're somehow better than this person who's not even alive anymore, despite all that, I consider him one of the greatest, if not the greatest, magicians of the 20th century, despite his many personal failings. According to him, we've now made the transition into this third age, in which we're dominated not by the image of the mother or the father, but by the child. Crowley called this period the Aeon of Horus, as Horus is the Egyptian child god who manifests in force and fire, and who comes to destroy all of that stuff in order to create something new. Horus is the hawk-headed lord of the horizon. Horus is the glyph of humanity waking up to its own divine nature. Horus manifests as mankind understanding, finally, that we are not created by a man or a woman, but rather by both. And that therefore, we're not only each a mixture of both, but that we're our own beings, divine syntheses. And that we can make our own destiny instead of staying the property of others. Horus manifests as mankind realizing that the sun does not die when it falls over the horizon, but that the earth is revolving around the sun constantly. And that similarly, the soul does not die with the body, but returns eternally. Horus manifests as two world wars utterly destroying the old world order, the force and fire. Horus manifests as the nuclear bomb, splitting the atom that is as sure a symbol of monotheism as any, and shattering that world forever, 0 equals 2. Horus manifests as women's liberation, as gay liberation, as racial liberation, as liberation period. Horus manifests as birth control, as women becoming girt with the sword, as it were, and taking control of their own destinies. Horus manifests as the old religions competing to see who can destroy each other fastest, struggling to maintain the very last vestiges of their power as they disintegrate into irrelevance. Horus manifests as the tendency for both genders to blur together, as the slow erasing of gender distinctions and the increasing prevalence of androgyny, bisexuality, pansexuality, and, as Genesis Breyer-Puric puts it, androgyny. Horus manifests as the tendency of the young to completely reject the dogmas of the world and demand proof on their own terms, this is where Magick comes in, on their own terms of the laws of reality. Horus manifests as the mass obsession with the occult, with magic, with the new age, with psychic powers, and that type of thing. And Horus manifests as an update of the old systems, an update of the old magic. So instead of fairies and shadow courts, now we have aliens and government conspiracies. Horus manifests as the dictum, every man and woman is a star. And the Hollywood star system was only a prototyping for our new reality, in which everyone is a star on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, shattering forever into the universe, each and one of us, the center of our own universe. Horus manifests as the complete destruction of the sin complex, and the realization that the gates of heaven are within every being, far more easily accessed by sex, drugs, and rock and roll than within a church pew. In the Aeon of Horus, the old image of the divine as either a comforting earth mother or a scolding sky father is completely overturned because we have been kicked out of the nest. Now what you might call God or the divine or spirit, what people would have said in earlier eras, takes 3 forms, right? It takes the form of the conscious universe, understood to be alive with awareness and infinite. It takes the form of the inmost light, the spark of divinity within each and every being, the star of light that is their birthright. And finally, God takes the form of us, these bratty, selfish, fucked up children with more electronic powers than even the most powerful of the old gods were attributed to having by supernatural means. We are the face of God, We, us, self-aware humanity, are what the early Christian writers called the Beast 666, the Antichrist, because we no longer place divine agency in external beings, but have claimed it for ourselves. For the early Christians, this was the apocalypse, apocalypsis, but it isn't the end of the world. It's only the end of the old Aeon and the revelation that we are as gods. So, astrologically, if anyone is into that, the Aeon of Horus is attributed to the signs of Aquarius and Leo. Aquarius symbolizing the constant flow of information in our electronic age. Leo symbolizing the lion-like nature of mankind's self-realization, and also the attendant egoism and self-obsession, which is a perfect recipe for social media. The Hindu sage Sri Yukteswar referred to this period of history as the Dwapara Yuga, in which mankind has begun to exit the dark years of the Kali Yuga and begun to demand realization on its own terms, with the attendant magical powers of technology resulting. So this Aeon of Horus, right, will last, in theory, for 2,000 years. It started in 1904, and it's projected to last 2,000 years past that. So, ask yourself, why do we live in an age of vapid babbling on the internet, on social media? Why do we live in an age of madness and militarization, with all the old religions being destroyed by force and fire? Why is everybody in America a self-obsessed brat who worships Star Wars? While our foreign holdings are policed by hawk-shaped drones, piloted like their operators are playing a video game. Why are we constantly under the all-seeing eye of the NSA, the eye of Horus, the eye in the pyramid? The answer is that we're all children. We're babies, just slowly growing out of the age of religious domination. This is the game of Horus. This is the game of slowly awakening children. So I challenge you to take a look around yourself over the next few days and weeks. Look at everybody, everyone around you, even the people in charge, even the supposedly criminal and really fucked up people, especially the people who are supposedly adults, the supposedly mature people. Take a look, and if you really look, what you will see is children playing games. Watch the obsession with juvenile diversions, the adolescent sarcasm, the social media nonsense, even the people with war. Take a look, and you'll see the face of Horus. Every one of them a sovereign, if juvenile, divine being, playing their own weird games for their own amusement. This is, by the way, the surest footing for the practice of compassion, to see everyone around you as playing divine games, no different than yourself, even if you don't agree with them. So, this is where we are. Mankind is a race of slowly awakening divine children with all the magical power of gods. And all that occult stuff, all the symbols in the books and the spells and all of that, that's just the packing folk, okay? What we're really talking about is a new type of consciousness, where the individual seizes their inner divinity and seizes control of their own life for themselves and takes charge of their own initiation, their own self-realization, instead of giving that power away to somebody else. That's what we're talking about here. So, if we're so great, why do we still feel powerless? Why do we feel like we have to go along to get along? And the answer is we don't. We've already got all the magic we need, more divine power than humans have had at any other time in history, ever. We're divine children at play with the universe. So the question is, for me, what are we going to grow up into? Because right now we're behaving like terrible, fucked up brats. Yeah. We're stomping on the planet. We're breaking our toys. Our leaders are morons who are trying to do every last trick in the book to control us and keep tabs on us. Well, they can't even keep the government running. Worse than that, we as a culture, like children do, are completely ignoring our impact on the people around us. If you've ever spent time with a 2-year-old, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're destroying our playground, essentially. we're destroying the environment. We're running out of oil because we insist on having the latest toys, the latest technology. We're driving Hummers and running an always-on neon civilization because it's fun, because that's our game. We've got things like Fukushima exploding and are seemingly unable to do anything about it. A report came out. I recently wrote an article for Vice about a report came out that the air we're breathing is now more carcinogenic than secondhand smoke. Right? That's how badly we're fucking up. Think about that for a second. So, despite all this incredible stuff that's happening, despite the fact that all the old shit is shaking off, despite the fact that we're becoming these beings, just becoming ourselves, really, the world is still in very bad straits. It's not. We're not talking about a messianic thing. We're not talking about some Horus or some being coming to save everyone. What we're talking about is people waking up to the realization that it's our responsibility to do something about it. Because if there's no God, well, if there's no God like that, then who's going to do something about it? Us, right? But unfortunately, we're too busy amusing ourselves with Facebook, Breaking Bad, and Star Wars, and whatever other game we're playing. So we don't notice it. We just pretend everything's fine. Bless you. But everything's not fine, okay? We've got two very serious problems as a civilization, whether we're slowly becoming enlightened or not. First is that we're artificially inflating the economy and greasing the cogs for just a little while longer with fracking. First they were getting the shale oil out, now they're drilling down into trying to get everything that's under there, completely fucking up the groundwater, just to keep the party going. This great Aeon of Horus kid game. And the second is the old Aeon didn't end. All right, the age of imperialism and slavery is still with us. The Aeon of Horus, at least if you follow this model, has only been going for 107 years out of 2000, so we've still got a long way to go. The Aeon of Osiris is still in its death throes. Every war you see in the Middle East just reiterates that. The whole concept of owning other people as property that came with the age of imperialism, that didn't end, okay? It simply became corporatized and more refined. Now it takes the form of corporate abuse of third world resources, of sweatshops, of military occupation, and drone policing. In the homeland, just under our noses, it takes the form of private prisons and incarceration of minorities for drug offenses to be converted to legal slave labor for corporations. Takes the form of corporate rape of the environment and the dumping of toxic chemicals in poor minority communities. So if you want to be a magician and you want to exorcise demons, don't look at all the demons in the grimoires. Look at the ones that are fucking up the world, corporations. For the nominally free classes, the imperial disease takes the form of white-collar indentured servitude enforced by criminal student loans, political disenfranchisement, and shrinking opportunities for the young. It takes the form of an overpaid, militarized entertainment industry and distraction-focused internet, which stretches into every aspect of our lives, continually seeking to keep us small, powerless, afraid, scattered, and numb. But all it is our old nightmare, the whole old Aeon trying to hold on. So even though all this is happening, for the individual constituents of the system, life is still better than it ever has been, even if our freedom has been traded away. And that quality of life depends on simply going along with the plan. So maybe individuals focus on a social issue here or there, on the token frictions between Republicans and Democrats, but to question the overall plan, to question this death grip that the old religions have on the world, that's taboo, right? To discuss that our so advanced modern world is an abattoir, a meat machine, this is forbidden. To question the two great sins of our culture, that our quality of life depends on the destruction of the environment, and also the rape of the global poor, this is forbidden. Even the indentured servants of the American middle class, as shacky as they are, stand on the shoulders of the slaves below them. The iPhones, iPads, computers, and consumer goods come from sweatshops that drive their workers to suicide. The food comes from corporate plantations, abused migrant workers, and tortured animals. The pharmaceuticals and cosmetics come from toxic, profit-driven black science and animal testing. And sweeping all this under the carpet, the abuse of the environment and the abuse of the poor, those are the two great lies. And those run through our entire culture and corrupt everything they touch. And as far as I can see, there's no easy escape. These are a manifestation of nature in its purest form. And in a way, these as well are a manifestation of Horus, the dark side. Ra Huarquit, the god of war and destruction. Horus comes in two forms. Hurparkrat, does anyone know this?
Yeah.
Horus has two forms. Hurparkrat, which is the god of silence. By this, have you ever seen Crowley do this? This, the sign of silence, you know this one? This is Hurparkrat. Hurparkrat is, you can look at that as all the good tendencies of the Aeon of Horus, like all the hippie awakenings in the 60s, all the psychedelic drugs, the free love, the awakening to all the stuff we've been talking about, the emphasis on spirituality. That's Horus in the positive aspect. Ra Huarquit is Horus, the god of war and destruction, the one coming to destroy all the old stuff so that something new can be built. That's the atomic bombs, the AIDS, you name it, right? So we're in complex territory here. But Horus is just nature. Vicious, brutal, red in tooth and claw, non-egalitarian, non-democratic, and non-compassionate in its own way, concerned only with who eats who, like a hawk who snatches a lizard in the desert and tears into it on a rock. This is reality, and this is nature unveiled. And the great advance of Western civilization is not that we've overcome this base nature, but that we've learned to keep our nails clean and our smiles bright and pretend it's not happening, to pay other people to keep it out of our consciences, to pay others to slaughter and prepare our food, to pay others to fight our wars for energy, and then take the blame when we get angry at them for serving our interests, keeping our consciences pure by pretending it was Bush or Cheney or Obama who did the dirty deeds when they were just fulfilling our needs for energy. To pay others to enact the sexualities we might be afraid of exploring for ourselves. To pay others to entertain us and keep us numb with pharmaceutical concoctions to stave off the demon of self-awareness. So it's not them. We're getting back to this. We're talking about internalizing responsibility, right? This is the process of spiritual maturity. There's no gods out there. There's no external forces telling you what to do. It's not the government. The government it's mostly fiction, right? Corporations are the same. It's us, right? And the only way out of the situation is to acknowledge that, our own responsibility. Not to revel in it, not to become overwhelmed by it, but to see it, to see the lies. And don't get guilty, don't get fucked up about it, but see and acknowledge what's happening. Sit with it. Understand that no one person can change it. The age of messiahs is done. It's over. No one's coming. Nope. No one person can change it, but together all of us might. And those minor acts of resistance and choosing higher paths when confronted with the ability to make those choices can cumulatively change everything. Mankind raised itself out of the darkness of prehistory that we've covered. It's overcome diseases, overcome some of the more outwardly brutal forms of oppression. And the Middle Ages weren't that long ago. And consider how far we've come since. The Western ideas of egalitarianism and human rights are only a few centuries old. Think about that. Think how far we've come since the French Revolution. How much further can we go, though? And new advances in science are occurring at a rate too fast to keep up with. And can we not maintain that catastrophic rate of advancement in the field of human dignity and human freedom? I say we not only can, but we must. Or, as many have told us before, our capacity for technological wizardry will be our demise if not coupled with the wisdom and focus on basic humanity that will allow us to use our new toys properly. I do not wish to see a world in which the human is discarded for the transhuman. So it's time to grow up. And, at least for me, it's my contention, maybe for some of you, it's my contention that the raw disciplines of magic and spirituality are that tool that can do that for us. That we can work with to initiate ourselves, to evolve ourselves. Magic, in a way, is I've been a practicing magician for 15 years, and well, I'm turning 32 next week, so 16 years. Thank you. Magic is an incredible process. It takes you, it's this breakneck journey. At the end of it, it's almost a way of psyching yourself up into a place where you feel like you can take on the whole world. And at that point, all the trappings are not as important. It's a way of convincing yourself, hypnotizing yourself that you are a magical being as you are, remembering that state. So it's about recognizing who you are, where you are. Magic is discipline, plain and simple. It's about disciplining your body, mind, and spirit to fully become yourself. And it's a hard, hard ride. There's no easy answers, but the answers that you forge are your own. And in a world in which nothing is certain, in which nobody has it figured out, in which all the old models are crumbling, I suspect that there can be no greater investment of time and effort than in your own spiritual growth and evolution, self-directed. Because nobody can take that from you, no matter what. It's not wasted time, ever. So, it's the job of a stage magician to produce illusions, but it's the job of the magus to remove illusions. So, that said, why should you practice magic? Because, I would say, we need more people with less illusions. We need more grown-ups in the world, or at least more growing up people. We're becoming an enlightened species, so when are we going to start acting like it? That's my question. When are we going to say, fuck Miley Cyrus, fuck Democrats and Republicans, and Facebook too, and let's put it all down and go to the stars? So that's my message for today. That's my sermon. Thank you, and may all beings in all realms attain to peace, freedom, and happiness.